Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Natalie with the City of Menlo Park. I just wanted to let you guys know that we will be starting the workshop shortly. We're just going to wait for people to join. So just please hold for a few minutes while we let everyone join the meeting or the workshop, excuse me. Okay, well, I think we can go ahead and get started. I don't see, and we just could wait. Chris, are you okay with that? Just want to make sure. Did you want to wait a few more minutes?
No, I think we can go ahead and get started, and if people join along the way, this video is going to be available on the Bosco website.
Correct. All right, well, welcome everyone to our workshop for today, which is capturing rainwater for reuse. Our instructor today is Chris Corvetti, and this event is sponsored by the City of Menlo Park and the Bay Area Water Supply Conservation Agency, or BOSCA. Um, so all attendees are muted, and we can pause periodically if questions, if that's okay with Chris, or you could raise your hand and use the question and answer monitor, and we can read out the questions. Um, the questions will be answered after the presentation is complete, and the webinar will be recorded, as Chris mentioned, and you'll be available next week for access to that. Again, here's the buttons that are circled for question and answer if you want to raise your hand. About BOSCA, just so a couple things about BOSCA is represented 26 agencies that include the cities and the water districts and the water companies and the university that purchase water, wholesale water from San Francisco Regional Water System. BOSCA member agencies provide about 1.8 million people and over 40,000 businesses in the community and organizations in Alameda, Santa Clara, and San Mateo counties. BOSCA's goal is high quality water supply of water at the fair price as possible. Um, Program objectives, I would say for Bosca is, outdoor water use represents the single largest untapped opportunity for water conservation in the Bosca service area. So outdoor water use could use reduction through the use of efficient plants, innovative technologies can help conserve water and ensure that future water supply needs for our communities are met. Here's some ways to save. There's different rebates that we offer. The City of Menlo Park offers a $3 rebate, but different areas in the area offer $1 to $4 a square foot for lawn be gone and up to $200 rebates for rain barrels. Also, one of the most popular rebates is the Lawn Be Gone, which various Bosca members are members of. Um, so the City of Menlo Park, like I said, offers $3 a square foot. And then we also do an additional $200 of purchase of a rain barrel for that. Some additional programs that we offer is a ratio smart controller, which helps to control your irrigation program that can be used through your phone. It's a very easy one. We also do a rain garden rebate that meet the minimum requirements, and it can be up to $300 for that. So more information about the rebates, you can visit bosca.org for that. Again, here's kind of an overview of the Menlo Park programs, which I mentioned a couple. And then we also additionally have the irrigation hardware rebates, which can be $5, $10, or $30 for the hardware. And then we do offer free water saving fixtures for our customers. So Menlo Park actually has 4 water providers in the area. So it's a good idea to check if you're a Menlo Park resident, if Menlo Park Municipal Water is your water provider. Our website is at the bottom, menlopark.gov/water conservation for more information on our rebates and also to find out if we are your provider. For Valley Water agencies that are not in Menlo Park, usually it's Santa Clara County or different areas. There are also rebates available for you. Here's some resources to look up different programs that might be more local if you're not a Menlo Park resident. At watersavings.org or the Santa Clara Valley Water Department's Droplet portal. They have a bunch of stuff there. As well as there are some other resources for other organizations and agencies in the area that are not in Menlo Park. The rebates are available through Valley Water, including lawn replacement, and other information on various rebates that they offer through the websites listed above. We also have some other additional upcoming workshops that are available. Here's some dates and times. Edible water, wise gardening for beginners is coming up next week, as well as the smart irrigation technology, which is one of the rebates that we offer that you could visit. Secrets to successful landscaping is at the end of March. Smart tree planting for Success in the Smart Future is April 1st. That's actually going to be an in-person one in Menlo Park in our new facility in the Bellhaven campus that our city arborist will be conducting. So that one will be a good one, as well as how to fix leaks is on the same day and creating a natural native habitat gardens on the 2nd. Again, for more information, you can go to bosca.org, conserves/landscaping and videos to see those as well. In addition to kind of water conservation, Menlo Park also has working with clean energy to provide new appliances and more improve your health and comfort and other sustainability programs that we offer. This program is at no cost and available for Menlo Park homeowners to convert gas appliances to electric appliances. So this is another great sustainable way to move forward in the future. Funding is available for limited time. If you want more information on that, the website is there, or you can call the phone number there or visit or send an email to sustainability@menlopark.gov. Again, thanks for attending. For anyone who has questions, you can email us at water@menlopark.gov. Now on to the main event, which will be Chris Corvetti, which is a rainwater specialist that's been in the Bay Area since 2016 and has done several dozen installations. So she's going to take over um, and be able to move forward. Chris, are you able to share?
Yeah, it says it's showing up now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Sorry, that was on
Oh,
my
wonderful.
great.
Okay.
Thank you
I got worried.
for taking over.
Okay,
Please
well, welcome
enjoy.
everyone. My name is Chris Corvetti. I'm a rainwater harvesting specialist, and I've done a lot of these installations with rain barrels and rain gardens throughout the Bay Area. So hopefully I'll be able to answer any of your questions tonight. I'm gonna go through this PowerPoint as I'm going through. Feel free to type questions into the Q&A. I'll be monitoring that as I'm talking, and if it's something I'm gonna answer later, I'll just mark that I'm gonna answer that live. And if it's something that I didn't mention already, I'll come back to the slide and go over that. At the end of the presentation, we can unmute folks so you can ask questions verbally, but for the sake of time, we're gonna hold that for the end of the presentation. Okay, so there are many different reasons to harvest rainwater, and those of you here on this presentation probably are already aware of these reasons, and that's why you're looking for some more information about the hows and the availability of these programs. So we're going to focus a little bit more on the how to install rather than the why, but they are great for pollution prevention as well as all of these other wonderful benefits to your home. There are different types of rainwater harvesting. We're going to talk about rain barrels, cisterns, and rain gardens today for the most part, but I didn't want to leave out permeable pavement, so I'm just going to do a quick mention on that. Permeable pavement is a great thing to consider for your driveway. A lot of our local cities, including Menlo Park, use something called porous cement in some of the walkways. So it's not particularly noticeable as a green measure because it just looks like you're walking on an asphalt walkway. But as you can see in this middle picture, porous cement actually allows the water to permeate through the cement and into the soil. But for your home, that may not be a cost-effective method. There are far more cost-effective methods for your own home where you can just do non-permeable pavers that have spacing in between them that allow the water to drip in. The one on the left has greenery planted in between, and the picture on the right you can see just has gravel in between, but that gravel allows all the water that falls on that driveway to actually soak into the ground and recharge the groundwater. So I'm gonna start out with some of the big questions that I always get and hopefully head those off right at the beginning. The first question I always get is there enough rain? And the straight answer is, well, of course, or I wouldn't have a job. But the more complex answer is absolutely, and I have the math to prove it. So 1,000 square foot roof or area can capture over 600 gallons of rain in 1 inch storm. So there's this nice little equation here, but I'm going to throw some numbers into it for you. So there's our equation again. And what that means is in our average rain event, I know we've had some crazy ones in the last couple of years where we've gotten like 7 inches all at once, but historically in the Bay Area, we get like half an inch of rain here, half an inch there throughout the winter. 1,000 square foot roof could capture over 300 gallons of water. Now, the annual average rainfall in Menlo Park is actually 20 inches. So that doesn't sound like much, and it isn't a huge amount. The US average is about 38 inches across the country in a year. But when that translates to 1,000 square foot roof, that 20 inches of rain a year is over 12,000 gallons of water that could be harvested and used in between storms. So we're not saying go put a 12,000 gallon tank out and hope you can fill it in the course of the year. What we're saying is with smaller systems, that water can get harvested and used in between storms throughout the year, totaling in a harvesting potential of over 12,000 gallons. The next big question I get all the time is, well, that's great, we've got the water, but I have this type of roof. Am I allowed to do it? And again, I wouldn't have a job if a lot of roofs weren't available for this. So, yes, most roofs that we have in the Bay Area are completely safe for harvesting rainwater. Any treated metal roof, untreated cedar shingles are most common. We have a lot of the asphalt roofs. We have a lot of ceramic and clay roofs. All of those are going to be completely fine for harvesting rainwater. The ones that you really want to avoid are if you have galvanized or untreated metal. If you're not sure about your roof, go outside and look at it. If it looks really rusty, it's probably not treated or galvanized. If it doesn't look rusty, if it's painted and it's shiny, that's going to be a treated metal roof. And people always say, well, I don't know, I have shakes, but I don't know if they're treated. With the shakes and the shake shingles, you're gonna know if it's treated because it's gonna be done annually. So if you're not paying someone or going up on your roof once a year to treat it yourself or more frequently, then it's not treated. So that's also gonna be okay. The one time that you do want to disconnect your systems is when you're getting a new roof put on. This is the biggest issue with this is with the asphalt shingles. When you're having a new asphalt shingle roof put on your house, it sheds for the first couple of rains. And that's okay. It's not really contaminant, but it's going to gum up the system and it will off gas a little bit of the oils that are in there. So you do want to disconnect your rain barrel system or redirect the water so it's not going into the rain garden, or you can put a filter at the front of the rain garden to capture all that before it goes in to infiltrate the garden. But with a rain barrel, I suggest disconnecting entirely. After a couple of rainfalls, that roof's going to be done shedding and you're going to be all set to set up, reconnect your system. So if you haven't gotten a new roof put on since the last rain, you're going to be fine with asphalt shingles. Some flat roofs, older houses have flat roofs that are based out of asbestos. You really don't want to connect to those either. You'll know if you have that. It's not common anymore. So I'm going to talk a little bit about rain gardens first, and then we'll phase into rain barrels. Rain gardens are not just putting some rocks in your landscaping or transitioning to native plants. It is a step beyond that. Rain gardens are an engineered system designed to capture, store, and infiltrate the rainwater. They allow more water to soak into the ground and recharge the groundwater. They often actually remove your native soil. We're going to look at that in the next slide. And sometimes you'll remove part of your native soil and then amend the rest that you leave in. We're going to talk a lot about using native plants so that the garden requires less maintenance. And I'm going to use the word rain garden a lot, and I may use the word ponding. Ponding is after a rain or during a rain where there is basically a puddle visible that goes away. So this is not a pond feature. You're not going to have water constantly sitting in the yard. This is going to drain into the landscape. This is designed to drain more effectively. So it's actually going to be dry most of the time. We're going to take a look at the anatomy. So a traditional rain garden, and we're going to talk about the requirements for rebate don't require this exact setup of a traditional garden, but a traditional rain garden is set up like this with the drainage rock at the bottom. I'm going to come in with purple. So we have this drainage rock at the bottom of this dugout swale. In the middle, we have what's called bioswale soil. This is a soil mixture. Usually it's some native soil mixed with some sand and compost. You can also buy what's called a biosoil mix from certain places like Linkso, sell that already mixed up. And then on the top, you're gonna have in a traditional rain garden, you're gonna have river rock, but mulch is also okay for this. In a traditional rain garden, you're going to have berms on either side. Berms are the raised area on the outside of the garden that help funnel the water into it. And those are going to be mulched. Those are going to be covered with mulch just to help that moisture sit there and not run off the landscape. You can connect your rain garden to a house. You can connect it to a sidewalk or a driveway. We're going to look at some pictures that demonstrate that on the next slide. You can connect it to a sloping landscape or a hillside by putting it at the bottom of that. And you can also connect it to the overflow of a rain barrel, which we'll look at later as well. When you're designing your rain garden, you want to think about how big you're going to make it. To do that, you're going to use that equation we already looked at to calculate your harvesting potential. So you're going to look at just how many gallons of rain might come off my roof and how much water do I want to be able to soak in the ground. You're going to walk out and look around the house at a big storm and see which downspouts have more issues with pooling underneath, with water just sitting there and coming back towards your foundation after a big storm, or where you see any issues of ponding and puddles in your yard after a storm or during a storm. You're going to look at your soil type. If anyone wants to learn how to do a very basic soil type test to see for clay or soil infiltration rate, I can talk about that at the end. Just feel free to ask me about that. Otherwise, there's great resources online for doing that. When you're choosing your location, of course, you want to avoid roots and trees of existing plants that you want to keep. You want to be at least 10 feet away from your house and 3 to 5 feet away from the property line. We do want to make sure all this water soaks in on your own property. You can't flood out your neighbor. So we're gonna kind of think about that as we're planning a design. You want to think about a shape and style that's going to be aesthetically pleasing to you. You probably don't want just a round swale in the middle of your yard. So you want to think about maybe putting some curves in the swale and designing it to accent the yard and what's already there. You want to decide your materials based on the look of your yard, what you're hoping to connect to, as well as what's going to work for the best drainage in your area. And then choosing your plants, you're going to want to look through Bosca's native plant list. They have a really great comprehensive Excel list that you can download, and I think you're going to get a follow-up email. I'll send some links over so that they can attach those on the follow-up email that will include that spreadsheet. But Bosco has a great sorting tool where you can sort by rain gardens, and it will list all the plants that are eligible for the rebate in the rain garden. And that gives you a really good idea. I also have a couple plants that I like listed later in the presentation. On this slide, on this picture on the left, this native rain garden is at Bull Park. If you kind of look in this bottom section here, you can see some rocks and cobbles. This garden has grown up so well, you can't tell, but these rocks actually create the top of our swale, and they run all the way to there in a little zigzaggy area. It starts about 1 foot wide and widens out to a big bowl down here around that storm drain that's just underneath the word adjacent on this slide. And that whole area is dug out about 2.5 feet deep and infilled with those layers like we saw in the previous slide. So there is drainage rock, then bioswale soil, and then there's cobbles on top. But once the garden matures and grows up, it fills in, and you can't always see all of that depending on how you design the garden. We designed this to be a butterfly garden and to really fill in. So it has, and it's a very successful one. It is preventing flooding on this bike path on the left here. This whole area used to flood, and it no longer does. So that's amazing. It is working effectively. A quick key to sizing your rain garden, provided courtesy of Valley Water, is if you measure the roof area you're going to divert, here is what they recommend for the garden size. Um, you can go bigger, it's just going to soak the water faster. If you go smaller, you may have ponding for longer. If you go too small, that ponding will not go away. And so you want to make sure you are sizing your garden big enough that all the water will sink into the ground. This is also available on the Valley Water website. When you're measuring your roof, you want to make sure you are measuring just the section of roof that is going to a downspout. So for example, if we were only going to harvest from this downspout right here, we would only measure that section that I just highlighted, which is half of the red section. And the reason for that is all the water that's going on this part of the roof here is going to go down this gutter and into that downspout. So if we choose not to connect that one, we can't measure that one for our garden. We're only going to measure the area for the downspouts that will be connected to the garden when we're doing those calculations. When you're locating your garden on your property, we've already talked about this a little bit, but I cannot stress enough, we want to be 10 feet away from your house. Preferably downhill. And I'm going to keep saying the 10 feet because that is not just Chris recommends this. That is actually in the plumbing code. That is the rules for doing a rain garden on your property. This is the state of California says. This is not Chris thinks it'd be nice. It needs to be, state of California says it needs to be 3 feet away from your property line. 5 feet horizontally away from any buried utilities and 1 foot vertically from any utilities, including water, sewer, electric. If you are not on a sewer system, you have your own septic system. You probably know this better than anyone because I'm sure you've dealt with everything with your septic system, but do not put a rain garden over your septic system. It is going to flood out the septic system and that will be all bad. So make sure you're also 5 feet away from any septic system. Avoid any large tree roots so you don't damage the tree above, but also so that you can get the system working properly. If your property is sloped, you can create a berm on the downhill end. As you can see in this picture, the green line was the original slope, and they took all the dirt that they dug out of that and they built a mound, a berm on the bottom end of that slope to give them that 12 to 24 inch depth for the rain garden. So I'm going back to that original slide we looked at of the anatomy of the rain garden. So you can see that again in that crosscut with the drainage rock on the bottom, the bioswale soil in the middle, and the river rocks on top. And that is a traditional rain garden. However, in the next slide, we're going to look at just the minimum requirements for the rain garden rebate. So the minimum requirements for the rain garden rebate still have to be 10 feet away from the house. You still have to be 3 feet from the property line. That's never going to change. You need a ponding depth of 6 to 12 inches. Now, if you have cobbles, like that picture at Bull Park had, those cobbles can be part of the ponding depth. But it would be the gaps between those cobbles that would give you your depth. So wouldn't you, so you can make it a little more, look a little bit more even with your landscape. So it doesn't look like a big pond or a big swale. You do not have to do the drainage rock in the bottom for the rebate. You can just do a rain garden soil mix. However, if you have more clay in your soil, I highly recommend adding the drainage rock, adding rock at the bottom because it is going to help increase the infiltration rate. At the top, you can see in this picture they chose to use mulch. So you have the option of either mulch or cobbles on the top. Either of those are going to help keep that moisture and help the top of the garden look really nice and stay really healthy. For the rebate, you do need to use all native or climate adapted plants. Again, Bosca has a really great list of those plants that you can use. You also need some sort of erosion protection at the input of the garden. I do want to comment on this picture. It shows an improbable line of water coming out of the downspout and just running over the lawn magically into the garden. Generally, you're going to bury a pipe from your downspout into the start of the garden. So you will actually bury a 10-foot pipe, running that from your downspout into the garden. You can also create a cobble lined trench to do that same thing if you don't want to bury a pipe. I normally recommend burying a pipe. It's just a lot easier to set up and to not have to worry about creating a 10-foot long trench that's a potential trip hazard in the yard. That's everything. The bottom does need to be at least 12 to 24 inches deep. That's the last requirement. So when you're starting to install this garden, you're digging down at least a foot. The more clay in your soil, the closer to that 2 feet you want to get a really effective garden. These are some of the native plants that I recommend for the garden. These create a lot of these have very beautiful flowers seasonally and can make a really great pollinator garden. I particularly really like the scarlet monkey flower, which is great for the swale. Juncus also does a really good job handling the flooding, seasonally flooding in the swale and then being dry in the dry seasons. I always seed my gardens with California poppy when I'm done. They just add pops of color throughout. And the yarrow gets really fluffy, which is really, really great. And you can put the yarrow kind of in the swale or the berm, which is really nice because it's very versatile on where you can use it. So this is a nice short list of my favorites. One question I always get is, can I put edible plants in? And the short answer is no. You cannot actually put them in your rain garden. But the long answer is, if you really want to do edible plants, that's great. I highly recommend growing your own vegetables. You can put them on the berm or just outside the rain garden. Their roots will reach in and grab nutrients and water from the rain garden without them actually being a part of the rain garden. Now with that, I don't ever recommend watering any fruits or vegetables that are in the ground or touching the ground with rainwater that's not been treated. So these are not good for anything from your rain barrel if you're not treating your rain barrel water. It's also not good for a rain garden or right next to the rain garden. These include leafy greens like celery or lettuce, ground level berries such as a strawberry, leafy herbs like basil or oregano, and any root vegetables. So your basics like carrots, potatoes, beets, turnips, radish. Those are all the ones I want to avoid. But anything that's going to vine up, anything that's like a bushy berry or anything tall like artichoke or rosemary, any form of citrus tree or fruit tree, any of those are going to be completely fine adjacent to a rain garden. So we're not putting them in the swale, but adjacent to, they're going to be happy and healthy. Maintaining your garden. So you obviously, as with anything you plant, you want to drip irrigate during the dry months, especially when the plants are getting established, they're going to need more water. We're kind of getting to the end of the planting season now. We have maybe a couple more weeks of the planting season, but we really don't want to plant new plants in the summer in California. They need a lot of water and the sun gets too hot for a baby plant. Um, Weed as much as needed. So you want to check them regularly for health, remove any weeds as often as possible. The one thing that's a little different from a normal garden is the mulch. You do want the mulch to be about 3 inches thick. So that's going to need to be replaced. And you can buy bags of mulch at a hardware store, or you can get it delivered. You can get the arbor mulch, like the not so pretty mulch from any tree company. Will drop it off for free. Make sure you're very clear with them what your expectations are, because if you are not, you might get eucalyptus or something that's more oily. You might get something with a lot of leaves. But it is a great way to get free bark, free mulch. And then if you want the really beautiful, nice mulch, you can also get it from Linkso or one of the garden centers nearby, and those have great options for very beautiful manicured looking mulch. Uh, Try to avoid any of the dyed mulches. Dyed mulches are usually made from pressure treated wood, which has chemicals in it from the pressure treating process. So those are not going to be as healthy for the plants. What you want to find is the ones that are called natural mulch. Microbark also in the swale may have the potential to float away, but if your berms are pretty well surrounding your swale, you can use microbark as well. It's just you want to make sure that you're using something heavy enough to not float away in areas that might float. Make sure you stabilize any eroding soil with ground cover. Um, you can use splash blocks, cobbles, anything where the water's first coming in, especially like below your downspouts. You really just want something there to keep the water from digging its own trench. Obviously, we want to avoid any synthetic fertilizers or herbicides because they're water pollutants. Check for and mitigate any extended ponding. It shouldn't be there for more than a day or two after the rain. Anything more than that is gonna start attracting mosquitoes, and it's not gonna be healthy for the plants. So if you're noticing that repeatedly being an issue, that it's ponding for more than a day or two, the garden's probably sized too small. So figuring out a way to extend that garden or go a little bit deeper will help with that. It is a requirement for a rain garden that you clean your gutters every 6 months. It's also just good practice. Gutters get clogged, and that can be a very expensive issue if they get full because they can get really heavy and rip off the house. So cleaning them is just a good homeowner maintenance twice a year. Let's talk a little bit about rain barrels, but if anyone has questions about rain gardens, now is a great time to type it in. Otherwise, we can also circle back to that at the end of the presentation. Okay, well, rain barrels do exactly like their name suggests. They capture roof runoff in a barrel to store the rain for later use. So this can eliminate or decrease your need for irrigating with municipal water. It can reduce your moisture around your building. It can reduce flooding, sewer overflows, soil erosion. And it's also going to improve water quality in creeks because it's less water that is joining all the storm water in our streets and carrying pollutants into our creeks. The more water we can slow, spread, and sink, the better the health of our creeks is going to be. The biggest question I always get is, do I need a permit? And the answer for most cases is going to be no. As long as you're plumbing fully exterior to a single family home and your system is under 360 gallons, you do not need a permit. If you want to do a larger system and you are not connecting to any electrical not connecting to any makeup water supply, and you are only using drip irrigation, that number goes up to 5,000 gallons. So under 5,000 gallons, you do not need a permit under those three conditions. If, however, you are trying to connect to an apartment complex, you are trying to connect to something not a single family home, you are trying to do a below ground system or connect to interior plumbing, those are all things that you are going to need a permit for. And you're probably also going to need a contractor because those are much bigger installations. But we're going to talk now about the ones you do not need a permit for, and we're going to talk through the basic ways to do this yourself. They're very easy to install on your own home. When you're choosing your system, you want to go back to that equation we looked at in the very beginning and look at your harvesting potential. We're going to ignore that 20 inches of rain and we're going to look at that 5 inch of rain number and use, or sorry, half an inch of rain. Let's try that 0.5 inch of rain number. So with your roof size for just the downspout you're looking to connect to, you're going to use that equation at a half inch of rain. And that's going to give you a rough idea on what your system should be. You're going to look at the number of downspouts you want to connect to and decide if you want to do separate systems on each downspout or if you want to interconnect your system. When you connect multiple downspouts to one set of barrels, it's considered one system. If you put a separate barrel on each downspout, it is considered a single system per downspout. So when I use the word system versus barrels, this is what I'm referring to. You want to look at how much space you have available. You obviously don't want to block any of your pathways or make it impossible to walk down the side of your house. You want to think about your use for the water and where you're going to run the overflow. And if you want to connect to a downspout in the front of the house, but you want to water a garden in the back of the house, you need to think about, is this possible? Is this actually a good use of the space? Or is there maybe a downspout closer to where I want to use the water? Or could I put something in the front closer to that downspout where I could use the water? So we're not trying to move the downspout, move the water all the way around the house and make more work for yourself. You also want to think about aesthetics and pick a barrel that you find attractive or that works with your landscaping. If you do want to use a recycled barrel, this one pictured here is a recycled oil barrel. And if you happen to be artistic, I am not. This is not mine. I pulled this off the internet, but I think it is very beautiful and I would love to have that out front of my home. So if any of you are really artistic and want to do that for me, let me know at the end. But if not, you should definitely do it for yourself. The anatomy of a rain barrel is pretty straightforward. The water flows in at the inflow. And in this case, we have a leaf eater, which is this nifty little contraption. If you don't have a leaf eater, you will have a screen. The inflow is always going to have some sort of screen to keep mosquitoes and critters and other pests out of your water. And that is, again, state of California says, this is not a Chris says, this is a legal requirement. There will be screening. We then have the main tank. And then we have the output at the bottom. So that is where the water comes out. Now your output can be connected in different ways, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. This barrel has a couple extra things, and one more really important one, the overflow here at the top. The overflow is the other key part that we're going to talk about. That's where the water, once the barrel fills, where all the extra water is going to go. And that's a really important thing to think about when you're designing a system, is where can all your extra water go? And the hint is it needs to be on your own property. You can't flood out your neighbor. A couple of the extra things we have here, the system has strapping that is earthquake strapping to help secure the tank in the event of an earthquake or some other reason that might fall over. Depending on your own preferences, this is not a legal requirement, Most of my installations are done on public buildings or buildings that are accessible to the public. This particular one's installed at Gamble Gardens in Palo Alto, so we do strap everything. The barrels get very heavy. A gallon of water is over 8 pounds. So when you have a barrel like this, which is 265 gallons of water, they get very, very heavy when they're full. So we don't want something to potentially have them fall over. This barrel also has a depth gauge. Depth gauges are completely optional and they are not specific. As you can see on this one, there is a red line and a green line, and the gauge runs between them. So it will pretty much just tell you it's about half full. It's about 3/4 full. It's not going to tell you the gallons. It's going to be a rough estimate for most of these depth gauges. You can get ones that have remote access. So if your tank is more inaccessible, or if you do decide to have a contractor come out and install a below ground tank for you, they'll install a remote gauge reader that will give you the how full it is. With this one, if you install a barrel on your home, you can simply tap the side of the barrel, starting at the top, working your way down. When it goes from sounding hollow to sounding like a thunk, you have found your water line. And you can step back and look at the barrel and say, well, that looks like about halfway up my barrel, and I have a 50-gallon barrel, so I probably have about 25 gallons of water here. So that is the easiest way to tell your depth without needing a depth gauge at all. So we've already talked about inflow. There are two different ways you can do your inflow. You can cut your downspout and do a full divert like this picture on the top. Or there is this really cool partial diverter like this picture on the bottom. And this, you simply drill a hole in your downspout. They come in all different shapes and sizes, including round. You just measure your downspout and purchase the correct diverter for your downspout, and then drill the correct size hole, pop it in, and the way it works is the water runs down the inside of the downspout. It comes into this little rubber catch. It runs around into the hose, and you will install screening right there. That will be your screening point. In fact, I want to make sure everyone saw that. So we would put screening right here where it's coming out of the downspout. Once your tank fills up, it will actually fill up this entire hose, fill up this whole rubber thing, go up and over that little center part, and flow back down your downspout to where it was already going to run. So that is why it's a partial diverter. It just takes some of the water into the tank, and once the tank's full, it sends the rest back. With the full diverter, you need a separate overflow. That overflow needs to be high on the barrel. If you install it low, your tank is never going to fill above your overflow. You want to connect your overflow to a garden, rain garden, a swale, a French drain somewhere on your property, and both your inflow and your overflow require that screening to keep things out of your system. Your output is where the water's going, how you want to use the water. So in these pictures, you can see this one has a filter on it. This one on the left is getting buried in the ground. That's going out to a rain garden. The filter and timers for that are actually 20 feet away downhill from it. This one, you can see the filter is right there. It kind of blends in with the mulch, and then it splits into two separate ones. The top timer on this system goes to a drip irrigation system, and the other one goes to a soaker hose that works like a drip irrigator for specific plants that need a little bit more water. You can also use hose watering for those systems that are smaller than 360 gallons. You can use a pump. An on-demand pump works very well. If, however, you want to hardwire that pump and have it there at all times, you do need a permit. So if you just want to bring a pump out, connect it, use it, take it away, you don't need a permit unless you're hardwiring it in. Um, I also love just running my output into a rain garden and being able to, in the dry season, turn it right before rain even. It's really great. You know, if you're expecting rain tomorrow, you can run your whole tank or part of your tank into your rain garden and then let that tank refill on the storm. Cisterns are basically the same thing as rain barrels. They're just really big. In fact, the picture we looked at for anatomy was technically a cistern because it is over 200 gallons. They're gonna last a little longer in the dry season. So you'll get a little bit higher pressure for gravity fed system because you have more weight behind it. But they're also going to need a stronger base because they weigh a lot more. As you can see in this one on the left, we poured a concrete pad. For the one at Gamble Gardens, there already was a concrete pad. These are not ones that you're going to be able to just tamp down the ground and create a nice level surface for. If you want to get that higher capacity without buying a cistern or using a cistern, you can daisy chain barrels together. They work on almost all systems. You can attach either the overflow or at the bottom at the output. If you attach at the overflows, you will be able to fill your first barrel. When that fills, it will start filling the second one in line. If you attach them at the base at the output, they will fill simultaneously because water seeks its own level. That's what's done here. That will also give you a better pressure for gravity watering because you're getting the pressure from both tanks pushing on your system. This is also a great way to bridge the gap from a downspout to a garden because you can have a space between your barrels, running a pipe directly against a wall to be able to have a higher capacity, even if you need to get around something and or go around a corner in your house, you can line barrels up pretty flexibly. Food grade barrels are a great option for recycling. The most common system is Blue Barrel Systems that you can purchase them online and then go pick up the barrel in Hayward. Um, they have other pickup sites depending on where you are, but the closest one for Menlo Park is Hayward. And it's my favorite because the barrels were previously used for ethyl alcohol, so they are extremely clean. These are food grade barrels, so sometimes you'll get ones that had Coca-Cola syrup or other things in them that won't hurt the plants. You just gotta rinse them out a little bit because it's a lot of sugar in them and they smell a little funky. Um, I think the ones in this picture had grape soda in them. They had a very strong grape smell when we opened them up to rinse them out and install them at Palo Alto Animal Services. Blue Barrel Systems will sell you just the barrel or the whole kit. You can also order barrels online or through your local hardware store and get different designs, including one like the middle one, which the lid can be turned into a planter, so it might be a more attractive option if it's going somewhere that you see a lot. You can even hide them. They make these funky rock-shaped ones in other kits. These usually come with the full installation kit and everything you need to set up the barrels, so it's a one-stop shop. You can have it delivered and you don't even have to go into your hardware store, except maybe to get your drill and drill bit. Actually, the drill bits come with the earth-minded rain station, so you don't even need that. Maintaining your barrels twice a year, you need to clean your gutters is the same requirement that the state has for the rain gardens. If you have a leaf heater, which we didn't really talk about, but sorry, leaf heater is the same thing as the screen, but it's the tilted screen. Any of the screens for inflow and overflow, you're going to clean at least 4 times a year. If you have a first flush diverter, which we didn't talk about, if you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer it later, but it's a great way if you live in a really sandy area to filter out fine sediment. It must be cleaned at least twice a year. You must visually inspect all valves and components. Yes, that means you must walk by your own house and take a look at this at least once a year. I sure hope you're walking by it more often than that. You must and those are all legal requirements above. These next two are Chris says. These are not the state of California requirements. There is actually no state requirement that says you have to drain your system and use the water, but it's gonna start smelling funky if you leave it in there a really long time. So please use it at least every 5 years. It really isn't gonna work effectively as a system if you aren't using it regularly. The goal is to drain it out and refill it every storm. So try to use that water every storm. Um, I recommend between once a year and every 5 years, get a hose out during the dry season. Once you've used all the water, get a hose out, spray it around inside the barrel, and just get any little fine sediment that may have gotten in there rinsed out through the system. Make sure if you do have a drip irrigation, you disconnect that when you're doing it. And then, of course, use your water. You want to use it regularly. We've talked a lot about this, so I think none of this is going to be a surprise for you guys. There are so many different ways you can use your water. You can even connect it to a toilet for flushing, but that does require a permit. So I recommend using it for your rain garden and for landscaping. I highly recommend drip irrigation and just trying to get that water into the ground to help our groundwater storage, especially in our area where we have saltwater intrusion. This can really help just fortify our groundwater. I'm actually at the end of my slides. I have a little rebate recap for you guys on what is offered for Menlo Park. If you do not live in Menlo Park, you can check out the flowstobay.org website to find your rebate options. They cover the entire San Mateo County. You can also go on the Bosco website to find a few more areas. If you're from Santa Clara County, check out the Valley Water website. Most of the rebates are pretty similar. Menlo Park offers an extra $50 per each of these rain barrel grades that ups them from the Bosqua standard of $50 up to $100. So thank you, City of Menlo Park, for making that a wonderful $100 rebate, which can actually cover almost the entire cost of a 50 to 75 gallon system, which is really incredible. If you have any questions, now is a great time to let us know. And you can, if you raise your hand, I can unmute you so you can ask them verbally if you don't want to type them into the Q&A. Oh, I've got a question. Okay, Bill, I've unmuted you. Oh, nope. I allowed you to unmute yourself. Let me.
Oh, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go. Sorry about that.
You send a copy of the slideshow to us.
This will be available on the Bosqua website. So you will be able to go under past presentations and it will be there. We won't send out the slideshow, but we will send out a selection of handouts and information.
Okay, thank you.
Natalie, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's all I have. So if there's no other questions, then just thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Chris, for a great presentation.
I know it's a lot of information all at once.
Great.
But these websites are super useful for breaking it down.
I did the dishes.
Thank you, Nance. Thank you, babe. Thank you. Thank you.
Skid marks in the toilet seat.
Great. Well, I think unless you have anything else, I think that's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you guys for joining us.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Oh, thanks, Chris. I think somebody's still on, but thank you for everything. I appreciate it.
Okay, have a great